Sort of done. As Arian had discovered over the course of the week, Luna was not the most punctual person. Normally, such behaviour would send Arian into fits of disapproval and rants about how people should conduct themselves in a considerate manner to others. If someone had said what time they would do something, then they should cross heaven and hell to ensure that they stuck to their word. However, it was Arian's libido that was doing most of his thinking about Luna, so he let it pass. Besides, for some reason he actually found he got more work done when she wasn't there. Baffling. Arian would arrive mid-morning and labour away, as he needed to get almost all the day's work done in that window. Luna would turn up around lunchtime and suggest that they do, indeed, go for lunch. Arian never argued. As they made their way through Crank, Luna received various greetings and acknowledgements, which she dutifully returned. Arian was impressed not just by how many people she knew, but that she remembered all their names and faces and always seemed to be pleased to see them. The thought of having to be pleasant to that many people hurt his head. "You seem to have a lot of friends," he asked during one of their lunches. Luna swallowed a bite of some low cavalry wrap. "How do you mean?" Arian fingered the sand. "Oh, I don't know. I guess just the way you seem to say hello to a lot of people when we walk through the streets, or sit on the beach, or anywhere where there are people, really." "Oh, that. Well, there's nothing wrong with being friendly, is there?" She flicked her head up and stared at him under her hair. "Oh, no. I think it's great. No, nothing wrong with that. At all. No." She guided her hair behind her ear and looked at Arian. All of Arian. She'd known him for years, her whole life, but she'd never really known anything about him other than what he did. She didn't know who he was or what he was all about. He seemed like a nice enough boy, but now she would get glimpses of something else underneath. Not necessarily callous, just something else. She liked that. "I'm not sure it's that great," she said after what seemed like a naked eternity to Arian. He looked down and patted his shirt. "What do you mean? Isn't it nice having all those friends?" asked Arian, who was positive there could be nothing worse. She took another look at Arian, but her nerve didn't hold. "It's okay, I suppose. I'm just being silly." Arian continued to look at her. "What's with you and the no meat?" she asked, gesturing to his lunch. Arian looked at his meal. "Oh, I don't eat meat." "Yeah, I noticed. What's with that?" Began Arian, still feeling exposed. "Well, do you know Harold's Butchers? Well, I was in there one time. Usually the king goes in himself. He says he likes the smell. I forgot why he didn't go in that time. I suppose it doesn't matter. I was there, and Harold was dealing with something in the back. All across the counter were these lumps of animal flesh. The creators even designed these hooks for him, so he could hang the animals from the ceiling, you know. But he said his roof couldn't support them. I stared at the various sections of animal carcass, and I could feel this rising in my stomach. I could taste the bile stinging the back of my throat. I had never seen meat like this before. It had always been presented to me cooked and firm, not sagging and crawling with flies. Just when I thought I was going to be sick. I'm not sick often, by the way," he added hastily. "And I wasn't even sick then. I didn't get the chance to be. Harold came bursting from the back room chasing after a boar he had deemed was now more useful dead than alive. He shouted at me to catch it, but before I knew what I was doing, I had opened the door and the pig was racing out into the streets. Harold was furious. He told the king he wanted compensation for my actions. The king didn't fully understand what the problem was, seeing as he had got his meat load anyway, but the queen thought it was a good idea. I was tasked with catching it. As you can imagine, I wasn't really keen on doing so. Instead, I decided to aimlessly walk the banks of Crank, then tell Harold I couldn't find it. Within 10 minutes, I stumbled across her, lying on the beach. The poor thing had ran herself ragged. She was just lying there, totally helpless, breathing heavily. I sat next to her and rubbed her side. Before long, Harold found us and took her away. I didn't even scream. I didn't shout or hit him. I should have. I should have made as much fuss as I could, but I just sat there, helpless and useless. Arian looked up at Luna and saw himself echoed in her features. He shook himself sober. After that, it didn't seem right to eat meat anymore. "That's terrible," said Luna before absent-mindedly taking another bite from her wrap. Arian studied the meat vaguely. "And yet, you can still do that. How can you do that?" She looked at her wrap and shrugged. Strong stomach, I guess, she said with her mouth full. Her shock of what she had just done quickly showed. Her eyes bulged and she covered her mouth with her hand and quickly swallowed. Arian looked at her and a grin spread across his face. That wasn't very ladylike. She punched his arm and he felt the sublime bliss. Shut up. Her eyes flipped up to meet his and she smiled. My dad would flip if he found out. He doesn't approve of that sort of thing. She added an unanticipated burp and her eyes widened in horror, before Arian burst into giggles. She frowned at him, but she too saw the funny side, and together they laughed. The following morning, Lyrna was sitting against the door, hugging her knees, when he arrived. Arian spun the key around his finger and caught it. What are you doing here? He offered a hand, and Lyrna took it. I just thought I'd see if I could actually try and arrive on time for once, she said, laughing, and Arian braced his knees. And look what happened. I'm here. She smiled again, and Arian tightened his grip. Her palms clapped her thighs. Shall we go inside? Arian refocused his eyes. Yes. Yes, of course. He bustled past her and unlocked the door. There's lots to be done. After some encouragement, and more than a little persuasion, Lyrna agreed to try her hand at carpentry. It soon proved that she lacked the necessary precision and patience to do an adequate job, and Arian hastily chased her off the valuable wood. This room means a lot to you, doesn't it? She asked, now perched back on her usual seat. Arian nodded, but did not look up from his work. The flouncy was really starting to resemble the original now. She looked at him quizzically. She had never paid anything such devotion, never put so much effort into something. She had never needed to. Why? Why do you need this to be a success so much? Because. Arian stopped what he was doing and looked at her. Because no one expects it to be, he blurted out with some hostility. Lyrna was taken aback. What are you saying? People want you to fail? Oh, nobody wants me to fail. It's very essential to them all that I succeed. It's just that they don't have much faith in me actually doing so. Who thinks that? Asked Lyrna. Her balance was beginning to tip from concerned to agitated. People. Everyone. All people. What makes you say that? Did someone say something to you? They don't have to say anything. Lyrna tilted her head. Seems like you're being a little oversensitive, don't you think? I mean, how do you know what people are thinking? Lyrna said, getting wound up herself now. Who are you? What makes you so special that you can know what people are thinking? You don't know what I'm thinking, do you? Arian resembled a rabbit staring at a cobra. Maybe if I just stay very still, nothing bad will happen. Lyrna turned her shoulder to him, and Arian completely forgot what he had been aggrieved about. Whatever it was, it didn't seem to matter anymore. What are you thinking? He said cautiously. Lyrna glared over her shoulder. The look on Arian's face made her want to smile, but she fought against it. Even so, her cold shoulder melted, and she turned to face him. I'm thinking that if this is so important to you. She leaned forward so she was at eye level with Arian. Why would you hire me? Arian's cheeks went crimson. I mean, you must have known I wasn't going to be very good at this sort of thing. If you had a problem with Juta, there are plenty of other people you could have asked to help. And that's another thing. You told me that you had to sack him for stealing, but I spoke to him the other day and he said you just let him go for no reason and told him not to come back. Arian never thought he could have been so happy to see Arborella, but as she stepped inside, a wave of relief flushed through him. She stood tapping her foot and after a moment snapped over her shoulder. Get in here! Codrich stepped through the door, with his shoulders curled and his head bowed. We have come to inspect your progress. I trust you have been making satisfactory advancement, she finished with a false smile. Codrich stood on one leg, swinging the other aimlessly. Arian gave the king a quizzical look. His gaze shifted to the queen, who had resumed tapping her foot and was scowling as usual. Yes, we have been making very good progress. If you would like to step this way, you can. Who is this? Said the queen, regarding Lyrna. Hi, I'm... began Lyrna. Charmed, I'm sure, Arbolella finished for her. I heard you'd been working with a red-headed boy. Yes, said Codrich vaguely. The one who looks like his mother did a nasty with a stick insect. Well, I suppose it could have been his dad who... Well now, how would that work? Everyone stared at Codrich for a moment to see if there was a conclusion on the horizon. There didn't seem to be, so Arian spoke. Yes, well, I was, but that didn't work out. Oh really? said Codrich, brightening up and straightening himself out. So I hired Lyrna here to fill the opening. Codrich slumped again. Yes, I thought openings and filling might have something to do with it, mumbled Arborella. What's that now? Asked the king. Oh, nothing, dear, said Arborella before she turned on Erin again. Right, let's have a look at what your labours have fruited. Arborella folded her arms, never a good sign, and Codrich looked at it out the corner of his eye, poorly imitating a lack of interest. When will it be finished? Arborella demanded. As soon as possible, responded Erin. Arborella's eye twitched, but Codrich chimed in before she could retaliate. How have you been attaching the different pieces? He asked, still looking at his feet. The long planks are nailed in place by nails to the crossbeams, and the main skeleton is connected using a variety of different joints, mostly crow's foot. Oh, sure. Yeah, it's one way to go, conceded Codrich. It's not the way I would have done it, but each to their own, I guess. He made a noise, and Erin couldn't tell if it was a derogative scoff or a whimper. He tried to study Codrich's face for a clue, but the king hid himself. Arborella said, That's all very fine and well, but have you solved the biggest issue the first boat had? And what was that, my lady? How are you going to steer it? Erin had to be honest with himself. He hadn't even considered that. However, he didn't have to be honest with the queen. Yes, that's all sorted. Arborella studied him. She could almost always tell when people were lying. That didn't always mean impending pain for them. Lies could be a good motivator. She knew that Arion knew. If he didn't figure out the problem by the next time she visited, which would be very soon, then he would not be in a good situation. She also knew that Erin was smart enough not to want to be in a not good situation. Ergo, next time she visited, the problem would be solved, and if it wasn't, she would have an enjoyable evening. Good, she husked. I think that will be all for now. We will return to inspect your progress in the next day or so. Her gaze focused on the point just behind Arion's eyeballs, by which point I am sure you will be eager to tell me all about this propulsion device. Bye for now. She turned on her heel and marched out the shack. Codrich quickly scuttled after her. Are they always like that? Asked Lyrna once they had gone. Oh, yeah, kind of, I guess. How do you mean? Well, is she always so... Yes, finished Arion, knowing exactly what she was about to say. So she never... No. Not even for... No. Interesting. And is he always so subdued? Asked Lyrna. Rarely, said Arion, as he considered Codrich's behaviour. I'm not sure what all that was about. I think he might be upset about being fired. Usually he's a bit more... mad. Lyrna stared at him curiously. What do you mean fired? How can a king be fired? Well, it's difficult to fire a king for being king, I'll grant you, but relatively easier to fire them as your assistant. He helped me initially when we were working on the fluency. And you fired him? Well, yes, said Arion. He wasn't very good at making the most of the wood, although, I will say this for him, he was very effective at getting it in the first place. But you fired him? Yes. Was it fun? Well, I was more worried about how he was going to react at the time. But yes, I suppose it was fun, Arion smiled. I should think so. How long have you been his errand boy? Well, I think I'm a little more than that, said Arion defensively. 5, 6 years? If it was me, I would have milked that for all it was worth. I would have gone up to him with his list of inadequacies and why he wasn't suitable. Arion smiled weakly. Yes, well, he is still the king, and remarkably sensitive. He also picks up on more than people think. Lyrna shrugged. Shall we go for lunch then? I want to sit next to the guy who fired a king. Arion puffed out his chest. I think we can arrange that. A thought occurred to him, and his chest shrunk back and clung to his ribcage. You can't tell anybody, though. Arion had done nothing the previous day to address Arborella's concern, which had the makings of a fatal decision. Still, today it was first on his agenda, so he pitched the question to Lyrna. She didn't seem to have many ideas or much enthusiasm for the subject, so Arion got some paper and a quill and started sketching. As is to be expected, Arion sitting doodling also did not excite Lyrna a great deal, and after a while she began wandering the shack. So, they really didn't leave any instructions, she called from a far corner. No instructions. Lyrna moved along the back wall. Not even any hint. No, they didn't leave anything. She was at the Florency channel now, with a strangely carved length of wood in her hand. They didn't leave anything. So what you're saying is, they left absolutely nothing behind to assist you in how to move the Florency through the water in the direction you want. No. I mean, yes. What you're saying is exactly what I'm saying. Lyrna was testing the instrument in the water now, watching the waves it made, and how the sand at the bottom of the trench drifted in the direction she moved the paddle. What are you doing back there anyway? Can't you do something useful? Arian looked up from his work and wished he hadn't. Lyrna was standing looking at the label attached to the handle of the instrument. She read aloud, "Please find attached one Florency propulsion device. To use the device, simply hold with both hands and push backwards through the water. The action will cause the Florency to move in a forward motion. P.S. It is called a paddle." "That seems remarkably convenient," said Arian in disbelief. Lyrna leaned on the paddle, with her other hand on her hip, while wielding a devilish expression. "Do you think it will do?" She saw Arian was about to retort. "There's another one, just over there." Arian shut his gob. Lyrna stood with her chin up and smugly flicked her hair over her shoulder. "Well done," he managed. Lyrna still didn't look at him. "I was wrong. The craters did leave something behind, and what you were doing was useful. Very useful. I'm sorry." Lyrna looked at him and reverted to her cheery self. "That's okay, silly." Despite feeling like she had more than pulled her weight for the day, Lyrna helped Arian on the Florency for the rest of the morning, until Arborella materialised shortly before midday. Again, she did not knock, but this time she chose to enter silently. She stood watching them for several minutes, and was somewhat disappointed at the lack of opportunity to say, "So this is what you get up to when you're supposed to be working on the Crown's time, is it?" Instead, she settled for a strained sigh. Arian nearly fell in the channel from the shock. Lyrna remained surprisingly cool as Arborella came from behind them and waited for their gaze to meet hers. "Now, have you... Stop panting, boy. Have you got anything to show me? I believe there was some mention of a propulsion device yesterday, so when this thing gets launched, it doesn't just lamely drift out to sea like the last one." Arian got to his feet. "Yes, I'll just go fetch it." He bustled off to where Lyrna had left the paddle. He snatched the label off and presented it to the Queen. She frowned. She had hoped that Arian would have solved the problem, but would still be in the early stage of execution, so she could administer a minor punishment upon him. But this looked like it had been finished for some time. Indeed, it dawned on her that it probably was a product of the creators. Still, it was done, and Arian had continued to prove useful. She'd have to find someone else to be her unwitting subject for the day. The Queen swept from the building. Arian breathed in deeply. "Shall we go for lunch?" "It's a date," said Lyrna, getting to her feet. Lyrna had her usual run-in with various residents of Crank. Some received a wave and a smile, others were worthy of a short interaction, but if any had paid close attention, they would have noticed the cracks beginning to show in Lyrna's persona. The strain in her smile had not gone unnoticed to Arian. "Do you remember the other day when you said that you weren't sure if it was all that great being friendly to everybody?" "What did you mean by that?" Lyrna took the time to give Arian another penetrating stare before she answered. "It's just, well, I feel like I have to do it now, like it's expected of me. When I was younger, I loved it, going out and seeing everybody busy in the streets and chatting to them. But I used to get so excited about seeing new people, or someone I hadn't seen for a while, and finding out what they were up to. I used to love discovering people, but now I feel as though I always need to be smiling when I'm in public, even when I don't feel like smiling, because that's the way people want to see me. To the extent I never really feel myself when I'm around people, until I started working on the Florency." There were many thoughts inside Arian's head, and many questions developing as he tried to process it all, but the only thing he managed to contribute to the conversation was interesting. "Do you know what I mean? You must go through something similar, what with being the king's personal assistant and all." Arian considered this. "No, not really. I mean, yes, I did have a sort of facade when I first started. I gave that up pretty quick though. I still need to step carefully when talking to the king and queen, and if I need something from somebody I can revert back to it, but most of the time I'm just myself." Lyrna bit her lip. "Are you not worried about disappointing people?" Arian started to laugh. Oh, you're serious? No, I'm not. Besides, I figured after the initial shock of being chosen, it was better to be myself, and if I wasn't who Codrich was looking for, then he could go out and find someone else. So you were what he was looking for? Well, I'm still doing his bidding, aren't I? Truth is, I'm not sure he has any idea what he wants, but Arbrella knows that I get things done, said Arian. Then he whispered, and she's the one who's really in charge. What? The Queen is— Shh! Blurted Arian frantically, waving his hands. You don't want to send everybody into panic, do you? But you just said I know what I said. Doesn't mean you should just go spilling the kippers. They did not have beans on crank. To everyone. Can you imagine how people would react? Anyway, it's a little more complicated than that. It's like, didn't you used to babysit? Yeah, a long time ago though. What's that got to do with? Okay, so it's like that. Sort of. Imagine you get to do what you want most of the time. You just need to keep an eye on the kid in the corner and let it get on with its own thing. There's actually a lot more to babysitting then, but every so often you might want to do something that the baby doesn't like, or the baby wants to do something that you don't like. And whenever the baby has one of these ideas, you have to do what it says, no exceptions. Well, Arborella's relationship with Codrich is kind of like that. After a pause, she said, Are you telling me the king is incontinent? Arian sighed. No analogy is perfect. The two made great strides that afternoon. Without realising, they worked their way through dinner and into the night. Their efforts were rewarded with the near completion of the world's second fluency. The long structure was finished, and with enough space for 2 occupants inside. However, as they found when they placed it into the channel, it was leaky. They removed it and upturned it on the floor so it could dry. Well, I guess that's tomorrow's task, said Lyrna. Arian did not reply. He stared at the fluency blankly. Shall we go? Arian? He looked up. I said, shall we call it a night? It's already quite late. We can figure it out tomorrow. They left the shack and Arian walked up. Lyrna's house was roughly in the same direction as his, so they walked together. She tried to strike up conversation, but Arian's contribution was minimal. Are you okay? She asked. You seem quiet. Oh yeah, fine. Just tired. You know, long day. They arrived at the Hartleby residence, and after a quick goodbye, Lyrna ducked inside. Arian stood like a recently glazed cake. Something was seeping into his mind. He headed home, and was almost there when his head betrayed his body, and about turned. His limbs were marshalled back into action as Arian raced back through the streets. He quickly passed Lyrna's house, and his legs groaned. They had hoped that this was going to be the destination, as had other parts of Arian's anatomy. Inside the shack, he relit one of the torches and started to search. He was sure he had seen it on the table. He flicked through the scattered papers, doing nothing to aid their organisation. He got to the bottom and nearly flipped the desk in frustration. He wanted to punch something, to throw something, to— What was that? A small corner of parchment poked out from under the table. He lowered the flame in his hand and pulled out the paper. Aha!